Theresa May tried hard with Donald Trump. She invested a great deal of political capital setting up his recent state visit, and she persevered with the relationship in spite of his often public criticisms of her Brexit strategy. It was all to no end. Today, the president ridiculed her on Twitter while doubling down on his criticism of Sir Kim Darroch, her government's representative in Washington.
The wacky ambassador the UK foisted upon the United States, he tweeted, is not someone we are thrilled with. A very stupid guy. He should speak to his country and his Prime Minister May about their failed Brexit negotiation and not be upset with my criticism of how badly it was handled. I told Theresa May how to do that deal, but she went her own foolish way, was unable to get it done. A disaster. I don't know the ambassador, but I've been told he is a pompous fool. Tell him the USA now has the best economy and military anywhere in the world, by far. Thank you, Mr. President. Well, here's what the White House advisor Kellyanne Conway said about it just a short time ago.
The president has made very clear the way he feels about the comments made by the UK ambassador to the US. And I think the president also yesterday commented on the president's view on how Brexit should have been handled. Many people accused the president of meddling and it was none of his business, but it turns out he was right.
Theresa May leaves office in 2 weeks' time, so Kim Darroch's tenure at the embassy in Washington is also coming to a close. So the tweets are a headache, not for them, but Theresa May's successor. Post-Brexit, what kind of special relationship is this going to be?
Jeremy Hunt and Boris Johnson will go head-to-head in front of a live television audience tonight, and ahead of that debate it would seem they have divergent views on how they would approach the mercurial Donald Trump. Here's a tweet from Mr Hunt that dropped in the last hour or so. Friends speak frankly, so I will, he said. These comments are disrespectful and wrong to our Prime Minister and my country. Your diplomats give their private opinions to Secretary Pompeo, and so do ours. You said the UK-US alliance was the greatest in history, and I agree. But allies need to treat each other with respect, as Theresa May has always done with you. Ambassadors are appointed by the UK government, and if I become PM, our ambassador stays.
And here is his rival Boris Johnson's response.
Is he right to criticise the current Prime Minister and also the way that the Brexit negotiations have been handled so far?
He's not. Look, I've myself have said some pretty critical things about the Brexit negotiations so far, and I wouldn't. That's one of the reasons I'm standing tonight.
I'm very pleased to say we're joined from Westminster by Sir Christopher Mair, who served, of course, as UK Ambassador to the United States, and from Washington by Amanda Sloat of the Brookings Institution. Sir Christopher, if I could start with you first. Sir Kim's obviously taken a rather sensible decision today to stay out of the way. It was his choice not to go along to the meeting with Ivanka Trump. If you were him, what would you be doing in the next few weeks while it all hopefully blew over?
Well, first of all, I would look to August, which is only a couple of weeks, 3 weeks away, when Washington closes down and people go on holiday. I would hope to get to August in reasonably good shape, excuse me, and then hope that come September, after Labor Day, when everybody returns, that some of the heat will have gone out of this dispute. Because the one thing that I would have to test is to what extent the president's anger and vindictiveness and spite actually infect the whole administration. Is this just a question of not being received by Donald Trump at a dinner for the Emir of Qatar, or does his anger spread into the White House staff? Does it extend to the National Security Council? Will Sir Kim find himself shut out of all kinds of possible meetings? And I think there was a cancellation earlier today of a meeting involving the Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, and Liam Fox. So that's one of the things you have to find out. How untenable is your position as ambassador, your ability to do the job, has it become as a result of the president's fury at the leaked cache of telegrams which Sir Kim sent back to London?
I think even by Donald Trump's extraordinary standards, Amanda, it has shocked a lot of people today that he would double down, having been so vocal in his tweets yesterday. It does demonstrate that this is becoming an asymmetrical relationship.
Well, this is not entirely surprising for this president. We have seen on previous occasions that he tends to ruminate on things and wakes up in the morning and tends to double down on them. His initial tweet yesterday seemed to come in the wake of Prime Minister Theresa May's defense of Sir Kim Derrick. And Trump, frankly, doesn't have anything to lose at this stage. Theresa May is going to be gone in 2 weeks, and so there's no incentive for him to be nice to her. And it is in keeping for him to hit back quite hard at those he has seen being critical of him.
Given the speculation has been rife about who is behind or the motives behind this leak, Amanda, is there a sense at all that Donald Trump is taking the bait and playing a role in whatever is behind this?
It certainly is going to be interesting to see who is responsible for the leaks. There seem to be two possibilities. One is that it's somebody within the British system who potentially has an axe to grind or is seeking to play some sort of role in the leadership contest or in the Brexit debate. The other possibility that people are, of course, discussing, especially given the journalist who leaked the documents and her ties to Aaron Banks and his ties to reported Russian money influencing the campaign, is whether or not there is foreign government interference. And certainly whichever one of those two directions this goes, there's going to be pretty significant consequences.
It seems the government is ruling out foreign intervention. Given that we're seeing the politicisation of the civil service in Britain, Sir Christopher, what happens if the next ambassador to Washington is more of a political figure rather than, say, someone from Britain's civil service?
Well, that's not without precedent. It's not unusual for the British ambassador to the United States to be a political appointee. I mean, I can think of three straight off the cuff: Lord Harlech, John Freeman, and Peter Jay, and there may have been others, I just can't remember. So there is a precedent for political appointees, and it is quite possible that the new Prime Minister, if that happens to be Boris Johnson, will appoint somebody whom he considers more congenial to his way of thinking and the way in which he wants to handle relations with the United States. But just let me pick up a point that I heard Christian say earlier on about the asymmetric nature of the relationship between Britain and the United States, so-called special relationship. This is not unprecedented. Go back to 1956. Go back to the Suez Crisis, where the US administration used all its power and strength to stop us in our invasion of the Suez Canal with France and Israel.
Can I ask you, we showed our viewers the sort of different approaches that Jeremy Hunt and Boris Johnson appear to be taking. Which do you think, Sir Christopher, is the better approach? To stand robustly and to push back and say, that's our ambassador, he will stay? Or, as you said, to be more congenial with Donald Trump and perhaps flatter him? Which is the better approach?
Well, I think we should play this kind of semi-long. It may well be that, as Amanda was saying, that Trump will get even more steamed up after another night's sleep and come out with even more extreme language tomorrow. We have to wait for the immediate storm to pass. We have to wait and see exactly how constrained, how hamstrung Sir Kim Derrick will turn out to be, and hope that when we have a new government in Britain, when the summer holidays are over, when everybody's back in Washington, there can be some kind of a fresh start. I think Jeremy Hunt has said the very least that a British Foreign Secretary can say in the circumstances. His statement was pretty mild. It asked for respect, which is not an unreasonable thing to request. Of course, the whole thing is now seen through the prism of Brexit and the contest between him and Boris Johnson. You asked me to comment on Boris's approach. Well, so far it has been to make no comment at all on Kim Derrick and the row with President Trump. Maybe in the debate tonight he'll be obliged to say something more concrete than he has. But there's nothing wrong with what Jeremy Hunt has said. Our interest is for this to wind down, and it may take some time for this to happen. So we have to be patient and not and resist the temptation, sorry I'm talking too much, to jump into the mosh pit, if you like, with Donald Trump.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Sir Christopher. Amanda, just quickly, do you think Donald Trump's administration will toe the line and follow their boss's lead?
That's the big question right here in Washington. Everybody is trying to decipher, as always, what Donald Trump meant by his tweet. Yesterday, he said that we were not going to deal with Kim Derrick anymore. Reporters have not been able to get a straight answer from either the State Department or the White House on whether or not he's formally been PNG'd. They're pointing fingers to one another. But certainly, as we are seeing with the Treasury Department disinviting Kim Derrick from a dinner last night, the Commerce Department canceling a meeting that he was planning to attend, it certainly appears that senior political officials are trying to respect the letter and the spirit of Donald Trump's wishes in his tweet.
Amanda Slow, Sir Christopher Mayer, always a pleasure. Thank you both for your views on that. PNG, persona non grata. Not as ostracised, I should say, as Donald Trump likes to perceive that he was. When you look at some of the invitations that Politico has gathered, Michelle, over the last year, you will see that, in fact, that you might not be able to see, actually, because it is quite small, but in that tweet from Jake Sherman there are a list of parties and events, celebrations at the British Embassy in Washington.
Names.
And a lot of names of people from the administration, very senior people. Steve Mnuchin, Kellyanne Conway, we've just seen, Wilbur Ross, all these sort of people who float through the British Embassy from time to time.
My bet is to Sir Christopher's point, I think that whoever holds the social calendar for the British Embassy might have a quiet summer ahead.
Yeah, scale it back. Hope it blows over. Probably good advice.